Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket. I'm your host, Peter Delapenna, and on today's episode, we have part 2 of the interview with Umpire Bryan R. Caine. If you listen to part 1, you'll have heard about Bryan's very unique journey into the world of umpiring and cricket in America. Started off officiating in soccer when he was a teenager in Pennsylvania and was involved in soccer and lacrosse as a player, as well as Aussie Rules football. Got into acting on a stage career in New York City, and then eventually found his way to cricket. Well, now he goes a little bit more in depth into his umpiring journey in the New York tri-state area cricket scene in particular. And in this episode, he talks a lot about what goes into umpiring in a bit more detail, a lot of the finer points, and a lot of the things that he's learned as he's gone on the pathway to what he hopes will be one day to officiate in ICC matches, perhaps the 2024 T20 World Cup that USA will be co-hosting with the West Indies, and who knows what else could be in store for Bryan R. Caine as an umpire in America. We'll get to the second half of his story on the podcast, but before that, I want to remind everybody that the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket is also sponsored by Moosa Cricket Stadium, the first and original turf wicket facility in the state of Texas. For more information, call 713-534-2195. That's Moosa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas. Take us through a typical day for you umpiring and what it involves in terms of a commute, getting to the game on the subway system in New York City, because I found this a bit fascinating when I was trying to coordinate setting up a time with you, that you were telling me a little bit about your schedule and how long it takes to get to and from the ground. And I've talked to players in the past and team officials, and this has been an issue in terms of the schools themselves, that sometimes a match will be delayed for a half hour or an hour because the entire team gets stuck in traffic, because a lot of the teams in the PSAL are based in Brooklyn and Queens, but Van Cortlandt Park is the biggest facility that they have access to, which is in the Bronx. And for people who are not up to speed on the New York City geography, trying to drive from Queens or Brooklyn to the Bronx is basically a non-starter at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon after school. It's out.
Exactly.
You got to take the subway or it might not happen, period. So for you, now you're based in the Bronx, North Bronx.
I'm based in I'm in Manhattan. I'm in northern
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Northern Manhattan, just on the border of like Manhattan and the Bronx.
Yep.
So
I can see Yankee Stadium from my roof. That's where I live.
So what is that?
Directly across the river. I'm at 158.
Is it exit 3 on the Major Deegan? What is that?
I don't drive. I don't know what the exits are called. I'm a poor kid who lives in Manhattan. I work minimum wage in Manhattan. I take the subway and the bus to everything I do.
So what subway stop? What subway stop are we talking about?
I live at 155th Street on the C train. The Yankee Stadium is 161st Street across the river. No one knows what direction I'm facing, but it's that way.
So in the old historical tradition of New York City baseball, you're on the Polo Grounds side.
I am on the Polo Grounds. Yeah, I am on the cliff just above the Polo Grounds. The Polo Ground public housing project that is now in that space is amazing. There's a cool little museum up here on top of the cliff that often does some old baseball history stuff. It's really cool. And the old pictures of Polo Grounds are incredible. They played Gaelic football and rugby and American football there. There's a great story of the Carlisle Indian School beating, I think it's Yale or something, at football at the Polo Grounds. Amazing history. I would fall off the cliff to the Polo Grounds about 100 yards that way. So yeah, we're in there. That's the New York geography.
So for people who are not aware, quick, the Polo Grounds is the facility that the New York baseball giants and the New York football giants both played in until the early 1960s. And it's literally, in terms of the intensity of the rivalry and just the local geography and how it's shifted and changed over the years, the New York Giants, literally, you're in Manhattan, so it's right across the river. You've got, what is it, the East River? Or the
East River there.
East River, yeah.
Both
East River, and literally it's a very thin strip that's the McCombs Dam Bridge, separates what used to be the Polo Grounds on the east side of the river, and then just across the river to the west and north, you have the Bronx. That's all that separates the Bronx and Manhattan. So on the east side, if you were in the Manhattan side, you were a Giants fan and a New York baseball Giants before they went off to San Francisco. And on the west side, you're a Yankees fan. That's what separated the two fan bases. And Polo Grounds doesn't exist anymore. And like you said, Brian, it's now it turned into a public housing.
It's public housing, yeah.
You would not recognize it nowadays. It has not a single trace of any remnants of what used to be a baseball, football.
There are old steps that you can't walk up that I have walked up. But yeah, there are old steps that are sort of the last remnants of the old polo grounds. They're mostly covered in trash behind a fence next to the parking lot of the polo grounds, housing there. So that's where I live in Manhattan.
That's where you live.
That's where I live in Manhattan. So to go to Van Cortlandt Park is easy, but the cricket that I'm doing these days, most PSAL actually is happening out in Brooklyn and Queens now. They use Marine Park a lot. They use Idlewild. There's 3 different fields at Baisley Park, at the Cage, in the middle, and then down the south. So they use all those spaces. Casino, they use
Casino Boulevard.
I was at Casino yesterday in 40-degree weather. We played 3 T10s at Casino yesterday in one of the Bangladesh leagues, the Bangladeshi Cricketers Association of North America, I think is that one, as opposed to the NYBPL and the NYBCL.
All right, so if you're doing a game in Queens or Brooklyn, how early do you need to leave to get on the subway, and what's your subway route to get there and then get home?
Yeah, it's a bit different for PSAL because it's just one game in the afternoon. I sort of get to take most of the day off and then sort of leave in the early afternoon. But let's say it's a Sunday. So a Sunday in 2021, I will have gotten up before 6 a.m. So about 5:30, I would get up. I will have packed all of my stuff the night before, have my lunch stuff laid out that I can make quickly in the morning, water bottles chilling in the fridge. Get up at 5:30. I leave here around 6:15 in order to get to somewhere like Baisley Pond or Idlewild Park by 8 o'clock or 8:15 a.m. for a 9 o'clock start. So I have to get there at least an hour early. I try to get there early because I'm typically the one setting up the stumps and the 30-yard circle and often the boundary, because they'll often forget to bring their cones for the boundary. Luckily, there's some that I've brought that are slashed in the bucket. But
just to cut in quick, just for geographical purposes again. So you're in Manhattan, Upper Manhattan, on the Upper West Side. Idlewild, for people who don't know, Idlewild is the former name of JFK Airport. So Idlewild, literally, you have planes flying and landing and taking off all day long. Idlewild Cricket Field is right on the boundary fence of JFK Airport.
Yep.
So to get from where you are in Manhattan to that part of Queens, that's roughly the distance. It's quite a while.
2 trains and 1 bus that takes, on a good morning, that will take an hour 45. On a bad morning, that will take 2 hours 15 to get out to a place like Baisley Pond or Idlewild from where I live in Manhattan. So it's really good. I've become very good friends with the bus system way out in Queens. Like the B8 and me are old friends. The Q38 or whatever it is, it takes me out. The Q17, that's what it is, that takes me to Baisley Pond. Old friends. I could fall asleep on that bus and wake up when it stopped at my stop 20 minutes later. But yeah, the transferring is, you can lose time transferring from a train to a train. If there's a marathon in town that day, or if the president is in town that day, everything will be delayed on the New York City public transit system. So yeah, I arrive at about 8 a.m. for a 9 a.m. game.
And you said you start on the C train, you said?
Yeah, I start on the C train and then I'll transfer either to like an E or an A or something, or sometimes generally an E to get out to Queens. And then also the 7 train that I take out to Metz Willets Point and do either Flushing or Casino Park out in that section of Queens. To take the 7 train, but yeah, usually the E train to get out.
Flushing, so that's the Corona Park. There's cricket grounds inside Corona Park, which is adjacent to the U.S. Open Tennis Center and
the tennis. Yeah, it's a beautiful location. All the grounds there are quite small and not really taken care. All the grounds are not really taken care of the way that you would want them to be. But yeah, if I show up at 8 o'clock, 8:15 for a 9 a.m. game, I then set the field. I'll probably have been putting on my sunscreen on the bus, because by the time, I arrive, I'll probably be the first person there. But by the time I've laid out the 30-yard circle and got a few bits of equipment out for the day, the players will start arriving. And then I won't have off again until the mid-innings break. So last year in 2021, I would typically do a 30-over game in the morning on a Sunday, and then a 40-over game in the afternoon on a Sunday starting at 1 p.m. So we'd finish a 30-over game before 1 p.m. starting at 8:30 or 9 a.m. Quickly transition and do a toss Sometimes I have to change shirts because the morning game might be a red ball game and the afternoon game is a white ball game. So I'm often changing shirts while I'm trying to throw a sandwich down my mouth, while I'm also trying to collect team lists from some of the teams. And then you have to make sure that all of those players that are there are actually the players that they say they are, because guys will be paid to come in and play under somebody else's name because they're not supposed to be making money while they're in this country, and all that kind of stuff as well happens. So yeah, I'll do a 30 over game in the morning and then a 40 over game in the afternoon. So 8+8 it's 140 overs in a day if we go through all of it. So test match cricket can suck it, and they can figure out how to do more than 80 overs, 90 overs in a day. We can easily play 100 overs in white ball one day cricket. So anyway, test match day needs to maybe extend a little bit. So I'll do that. And then I take the same bus and subway combo back. And that's after the ground has been completely cleaned up after the second game. That's often the umpire's responsibility in club cricket because we're the ones who are the key holders to the boxes and to the places where they keep the artificial matting that we play on and where they keep the equipment for the day. So yeah, in the summer, my partner and I have all sorts of agreements about how we are going to spend time with each other, because in the summertime, am gone starting at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, and then I will see them again at 10 p.m. on the Sunday when I've come home. And then on the Monday morning, I'll wake up and write all my reports from the weekend. If there were any incidents from the week, I'll have to write up reports. I often do ground reports on the grounds that I go to, because the leagues talk to each other about how the grounds are holding up and how the equipment at the grounds are holding up over the year. So it's a really long day. And I do that every Saturday and Sunday from May 1st until it snows.
You mentioned a lot of things there. Ringers, I forgot about ringers. I'll never forget. I umpired. They would tell you make sure that the players are registered in the CLNJ. Players have to be registered by Wednesday before the match they're going to play, and you can do a check. And if they're not on the list, then it's ineligible, and the team may forfeit the game afterwards. And I wouldn't check too much, but I remember one time I umpired a game, and this guy opened the batting, and he was incredible. I thought, geez, like, where's this guy been all season? I haven't seen him before. Mm-hmm. Damn, he's pretty good. Like, where are his stats? This is kind of weird. He doesn't have any stats. And yeah, he was a ringer. They brought him in, and like, I forget if he played under a fake name or he registered like the night before when he had to be registered a full week before. And it was like it was like literally the only time I checked the registration the entire season. Mm-hmm. And that was the one time I found a ringer. And so mm-hmm. They won the game, but they wound up having a forfeit after the fact because it was procedurally, he was ineligible.
Playing under protest, they call that in a lot of these leagues. Yeah.
But you've got the ringers, you've got all this stuff you have to do in terms of filing reports. You talked about ground reports, match reports. So just checking that the names correspond, and there is sometimes guidelines in the league rules that say you're theoretically entitled to check driver's license, or players have to bring an ID to make sure that ID that they submit on the team sheet matches the ID that the person is supplying, so that they're not playing under fake name, or it's not Joe Smith and it's actually Mahela Jayawardena who's Joe Smith for the day.
They weren't ringers. They came in last year in the National League. They had played their requisite 3 games in the season or ever, but one team had brought in Devendra Bashu and Gunakesh Moti, 2 West Indian spinners, and this was a final in the New York National League, and it was over. It was a 40 over final that was over in 2 hours. Because these guys just came through and they spun the game and they batted through and finished it in 2 hours. It was incredible.
So you get these ringers like that'll come across. But in terms of administratively, so you talked about the ground reports you have to file, checking all the documents and making sure the players match up and they're not using ineligible players. Ground reports, match reports, if there's an infraction or an infringement, the player needs to be written up. And you're doing this as somebody who's, like you said, leaves at 6, gets back at 10 at night. So there's an extreme level of commitment. What to you is the most frustrating thing that you experienced over the course of a match or a season that makes you think, is it really all worth it?
That's a good question. What is the most frustrating thing? There are reams of paper that are full with Excel sheets this long, full of frustrating things. To me, it's some of the basically lackadaisical attitude toward showing up on time, starting a match on time, and then meeting the over rate. As a person who, is getting really into this umpire thing, and at the higher levels, everything happens on time. You wait 30 seconds for the clock to tick over to 10 o'clock, and then first ball, go. When there's professionals around you. At the club level, sometimes it's a 9 o'clock game, and the two captains show up, and the first ones to show up at 9:15 a.m. And then they will demand that they play their full 30 over game, even though there's a 40 over game coming on in now just 3 or 4 hours on the same ground. So that, to me, the sort of lack of any understanding of professionalism, even when we're amateurs, but showing up, writing your list, getting there on time, having matching uniforms. That's sometimes a price issue, sometimes a manufacturing issue, but can you all at least wear the same color? Things like that. That, to me, is the most frustrating.
You call it professionalism. I call it basic human decency and common courtesy. I'll never forget, I umpired a game in Secaucus at the Laurel Hill ground in Secaucus. Have you ever umpired a game there at Laurel Hill?
The one with it's sort of they've got stands around and there's lights. That's situation. Yeah, I know that one.
Very nice ground, or at least it was when it opened. I'm not sure what state it's in currently. But
it's got a soft pitch, but it's good. It's very nice.
It's crowned. It's nice crowned outfield, so you get a natural slope and you get genuine boundaries. But I'll never forget, I did a game, and one of the teams showed up. So it was usually South Gujarat Cricket Club was usually the home team there, and then because I think they had a permit, and then whoever was their opponent in the league would play. So it was the opponent was the issue. They showed up late, and according to the rules, you forfeit the toss. So they only had like 5 or 6 guys at the time. The toss, the latest possible time for the toss. They finally get like 8 guys there, which was the minimum. And captain was upset at me because I said, "Sorry, you forfeited the toss." It's like, "No, come on, it's a fun cricket match. We're playing a fun cricket game. Why are you being such a hard ass? Like, come on, like wait for our 11 guys to get here." And I was like, "No, these are the rules. Like, we're playing here. Yeah, it's meant to be, an amateur league and a casual league in a sense, but we have the rules in place for a reason, A. But B, it was the sense of like, well, I'm playing the match, and the match will start when I feel like it, and the match will, I want to get my full 40 overs in. And so, why can't you delay the start for an hour because we all want to play our 40 overs?" And it was just, lack of kind of respect for other people's time, which pissed me off. So that was the start of the day that got me annoyed. You maintain your umpire neutrality. I wasn't like, "Oh, these guys showed up an hour late, so I'm just going to give them all LBW so I can get out of here to make up for it." But you keep in mind, and you're just like, all right, if this is how they start the day, I'm not giving them any slack for other stuff like drinks breaks, which again are supposed to be 3 minutes, but then drag on to 5 and 10 minutes because they're doing all sorts of ridiculous stuff. The most ridiculous of which was one of the players, his son, it was his birthday. So at one of the drinks breaks, the mom/wife shows up with the kid, and they decide it's time to cut the birthday cake in the middle of a cricket match. And so we're in, I think, the second drinks break in the first innings, because again, they had the field. So the South Gujarat won the toss, chose to bat first because they knew that they were going to be batting against a team that was only fielding 8 players. So they had, all of these open spaces to score runs throughout the first innings. They finally got their 11 guys to show up. Second drinks break comes around. They have this ridiculous, it went on for 10 or 15 minutes, this birthday cake cutting, I'm telling them, "Guys, drinks break's over. Got to get on the field." No, we can't go on the field. We have to sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. And then, after we sing happy birthday, and when we got to cut a cake, we have to light the candles. The candles wouldn't light. They're screwing around with all this stalling while South Gujarat they're there to play a cricket match.
Yeah.
And I'm there to officiate. It's not about me, but it's just respect for time. The match is supposed to start at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, whatever it was. And I'm committing 7 hours. I'm expecting to be able to leave at 6 o'clock to go home. I have shit to do. Yeah, you want to play your cricket? I have shit to do. Yeah. Other people have lives, okay? Yeah. We get to the end of the innings, and I tell them, "Guys, your over 8 was terrible. You have to chase the target. I've calculated the time. You have to chase the target now in 35 overs.
Right. Yeah.
What do you mean 35 overs? What the hell? Why are you being such a hard ass? This is ridiculous. Like, guys, you started late. First of all, you didn't show up on time. You forfeited the toss. So right away, you didn't have any respect for time to show up on time. We started late because we needed to wait for you to have the minimum number of 8 players to take the field. Match can't start until you have 8 players. So the match started late because of that. Okay, so the clock started at the designated time, but if the match doesn't start, that time comes off your over rate. Sorry.
Exactly.
And then you compounded that by the fact that you felt it was imperative to sing happy birthday to your son and cut the cake in the middle of a cricket match. You could have
Which
waited
is very nice, but you can do it another time.
Hey, and the argument from them to tell me I'm such a hard-ass and callous and cold-hearted bastard was, we invited you to sing with us and we offered you a slice of cake. Why are you being so mean to us? We had you be part of it. We said, would you like some cake? You were there to sing too if you wanted. Like, now you're trying to penalize us when we offered you cake. I didn't want cake. A and B, like, it's not the point.
I didn't see cake in the playing conditions. I didn't see.
But yeah, it should be. Yeah, the drinks break can be extended to allow for birthday cake cutting and singing. I said you could have done it at the innings break. You didn't have to do it then. You could have waited another hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was. You didn't have to do it at that exact moment. You chose to. That's your fault. Meanwhile, South Gujarat is pissed off at me, saying that they should have chased the target in like 32 or 30 overs. They're saying I didn't penalize them enough. They said I was too lenient, that I only shaved off 5 overs. Like, what are you doing? It was ridiculous. The time extended this and this. And I said, well, guys, I gave some allowances because you hit so many damn 4s and 6s that they had to chase after the ball and find it. And so, the ball was lost a few times and I gave some allowances for that, but like, whatever. But then,
so frustrating.
But it was every like, week. It was just the human common courtesy and human decency of like, again, I got shit to do. I expect to be out of here at 6 o'clock. If the game naturally goes to 6:15, 6:30 for whatever rain or environmental factors or whatever, there's just high scoring, lots of 4s and 6s, balls lost, somebody gets injured, that's fine. I'm more than willing to accommodate for that. And there's conditions that the umpires can accommodate that for that as well. There's no umpiring condition to accommodate for cutting a birthday cake or because you guys are too lazy to show up on time. And, they're probably, if any of them are watching, listen, they're going to say, oh, this guy's a cold-hearted bastard. He wanted to get out of there for 6 o'clock because he didn't want to sing happy birthday to my son. And what kind of mean person does that? Good for your son. Happy birthday. I have nothing against your son. I have something against you for stalling and affecting everybody else's plans for the day. And so it's just that, to me, you say professionalism. I just think it's a lack of. It has nothing to do with professional and amateur, because to me, professionalism is a mindset. It has nothing to do with being paid or unpaid or whatever. Yeah. It's just again, human interaction, basic human decency, human courtesy. Show up on time. If you've agreed to start a match at a certain time, show up on time.
Yeah.
Show respect for the other people who were involved in that occasion. I don't understand.
This was one of the things that you mentioned it earlier about Columbia being a sort of diverse on purpose club, and it's one of the only ones that's diverse on purpose. And we had a couple pretty productive conversations about showing up on time and what that was about. And we heard from a few people from our South Asian players that said it's not part of our culture. It's not part of the culture of playing cricket, how we grew up playing it. It's not part of our culture, which is like dinner and family and being on time. Like being on time, right, is a thing that the British invented when they brought trains to India, right, and then tried to force everybody, right? I mean, this is what I studied in college. This is colonialism and post-colonialism stuff, where being on time, running on a schedule, that's a thing that was brought to them by the colonizers, in a lot of ways. And I think that the expression of them wanting to play cricket on a Saturday or a Sunday and have it just be their relaxing thing. It's their golf, it's their tennis, but without access to country clubs, because that is another thing that is reserved maybe for one class of people. And I don't agree that that's the way you should be coming to cricket games. Is it 9:15? I've tried to understand a little bit better and tried to work out ways around it. And I think teacher voice helps when telling people that you need to cut overs, because you can, and being tall and pretending that I know what I'm doing, and teacher voice sort of helps me to move on those games. And I've got a bit of, respect around, but it's still just not part of it. Some of these guys come off, I'll get there at 6 a.m. or sorry, I'll leave at 6 a.m. I'll get there at 8 a.m. Right. And there's a couple players already there. Where are they? They're in cars in the parking lot sleeping, because they're coming off their 12-hour overnight Uber shift. and they're trying to get in 60 minutes of sleep before they come out and play the game, and they don't want to get dressed and come out and do a toss 30 minutes before they start. And I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's okay that we start the game late, but I'm trying to understand a little bit better and trying not to get so frustrated about it, because it is frustrating. It is frustrating. And I think that as the game grows and as it professionalizes, I think that this will grow. Again, there's no robust youth program that teaches the rhythm of how to get into the game here. A lot of people are coming from somewhere else. They play here. It's something special. It's something different. And I hate starting games late. It is my least favorite thing, because I am there. I have showed up on time. I have done the unpaid labor to spend 2 hours on the freaking subway to get here on time, to make sure that your stumps are up, that your mat is out, that your 30-yard circle is laid, and you guys cannot get here on time to start the game. That's about me, right? It's about playing as much cricket as you can and making sure everybody gets the most out of the day. I don't know that I would have allowed the birthday cake on the field. To me, that sounds, let me look it up. It's right there in the law book. That to me might constitute a refusal to play, under which the umpire has the right to end the game and give it to the other team.
You're gonna have to,
that may have happened in that situation.
You're gonna have to get Tom Smith to add an appendix. Tom Smith addresses what to do in the case of a birthday cake at drinks break.
I'm sure it's in there somewhere. I've got a couple old versions of Tom Smith. I've got one from the 1950s and I've got one from the early 1960s back here that Tom Smith actually wrote. And I'm sure in there's something about cake, 100%.
What you did not mention in terms of the most frustrating experience at a cricket ground, getting arrested. I can't believe that was not right at the top of the list. I thought it was going to come firing out, getting arrested at a cricket match. So for people who have read Netherland, there's all sorts of zany things that come across in the book Netherland. Joseph O'Neill, who was a vice president of Staten Island Cricket Club, and a lot of the experience, anybody who's played against Staten Island Cricket Club, you talk to the members, you talk to Clarence Modeste, you talk to some of the other members of the club, and you ask them about Joseph O'Neill and his inspiration for Netherland, at least the cricket aspects of the book. And 99% of the content is straight out of club matches and experiences that have been happening with Staten Island Cricket Club, either in the Commonwealth League or the World Series League, and things that have actually happened. And one of the incidents that's described in the book is a bowler comes on to bowl, and he takes off his hat to hand to the umpire, and then out of his pocket he takes out a gun and hands it and puts it into the hat to give to the umpire, so the umpire can hold his gun and his hat while he has his bowling spell. So you see some pretty wild and crazy stuff in New York City that actually happened apparently. And he fictionalized it slightly, but it's something that actually happened in a club match. For you, getting arrested, and I think there's some incidents in Netherlands where guys get arrested. There's threats of players being arrested if they don't scram. How did you get arrested? What led to this? Take me through the whole course of events.
Our game that day, it unfolded a lot like you would expect the raid of a prohibition speakeasy to take place. This was a charity match between two pubs. There was an Aussie pub and a English pub, and they had put together teams of their expat staff and then had filled in the players with some local guys that I had helped supply and that Columbia had helped come up with.
Where was the game? Where was this?
Stables, Van Cortlandt Park Stables, the beautiful, the one and only Van Cortlandt Park Stables. I was the event manager for the day. I worked for one of those pubs at the time, and we thought we had worked it out, that we had gotten the permit that was inclusive of having booze with us. It was a charity match. We were raising money for the Australian Wildlife Fund, I believe. And so there were going to be people there bringing baskets, bringing lunch. It was a little T20 that we're going to play in whites. It was all very nice. I wasn't even umpiring. I was playing / coordinating / umpiring. I did everything that day. But we thought we'd worked it out, that we'd gotten the permit that allowed us to have a bit of booze, so our supporters could come. We were sponsored by two different beer companies, a beer company and a gin company, which each sponsored the different pubs. And we had people bring their hampers and their baskets, and we promised them all this stuff. And we got through, I think, just about the first innings before someone noticed, or someone who was in the stables maybe called and said that we were drinking beers out on the field, and there was all this stuff. And one park police showed up and asked us what we were doing, and we tried to explain them what we were up to, and then they called on the horn, on the blower, and 4, 5 more park police showed up. A couple of them stepped out of their car, having heard that the situation was escalating and that there was disorderly conduct going on in the field. And so Officer Perez got out of her car, and first thing she did was whip out her truncheon and stick it in my chest and say, "You're being disorderly." And I said, "We have a permit for this. We're just trying to play. We don't really understand what's happening right now, why you've come here. There's children here. There's like players and their wives with, hampers and baskets sitting here having a picnic, whatever." And then like a raid of a speakeasy, they found all of our coolers, right, which were just sitting out on the field, and they individually took out each beer and counted them, because apparently each beer was a $150 fine or something. So they counted each beer and then put it in the back of their own trucks. Were they going to smash them later and pour them down the drain like they did in Prohibition? Probably not. Probably a huge party, the Parks Department, police department that night.
That's a great asset seizure.
Exactly.
Utilization.
Eminent domain. Exactly. So like me as the event organizer, right, and then the two owners of the two pubs who were the captains of the teams got arrested. We got little cuffs put on. We sat in the back of the car. They wrote us our summons. They gave us a court date. The whole deal. I think we got lucky. Somebody at the Bronx DA decided that we didn't need to be prosecuted for the crime that we committed. I guess the documents that we submitted to them afterward had been good enough, and they called us the night before our court date. I'd already taken off work, called us the night before and told us we didn't have to come.
I thought you were going to tell us life without parole for drinking beer on a cricket field.
Exactly. That's why I'm here. This is my parole, actually. This is my sentence. I've been hired to be an umpire by the U.S. Department of Corrections in order to serve my time and just stand there for 12 hours a day and be tortured by the same ball being bowled wide over and over and over again. This is my personal bad place, right?
What constituted disorderly conduct?
We were asking them what the rules were, and could they please cite for us the law or the statute or the reasonable, good-hearted nature of human to tell us what exactly we had done wrong. And never once were we cited by that law. Never once were we told, no, you can't have this beer. Your permit doesn't actually cover it. Nobody did that. It just escalated and escalated and escalated. I think luckily enough, we were calm enough, and the police, I guess, were calm enough in collecting their couple hundred beers. There was a lot of beers. But
the police didn't have to be called because you gave somebody LBW and it sparked a brawl.
No, that hasn't happened. I've seen that happen on fields, not on my field, but another field at Van Cortlandt Park where apparently there was a knife involved. This is somewhere in the 2014 region, I believe, where there was a knife on the field at Van Cortlandt Park. Somebody had to get called. But I see Officer Perez sometimes. She's still employed at Van Cortlandt Park and through the park police. I see her sometimes. I don't know if she knows me, but I know she is. So it's funny. I give her a little wave every time. I don't know that she knows, but why I'm doing that. But yeah. It was funny. The charges got dropped.
Probably doesn't recognize you because you don't have the cooler full of beer. She puts the two and two together. She recognizes you as the guy who brought too much beer that was causing disorder. Without the beer, probably doesn't recognize you.
There were 100 more beers in the trunk. We just waited till they left. And then we're more careful for the rest of the day. Happens.
Do you feel you got your money's worth with the arrests, or do you feel like you could have kicked up enough of more of a fuss to push the boundaries so that you wouldn't have been released so easily and but gotten to go home at night?
No, I don't know. I don't know that I would have done well in the court system. I'm a soft suburban boy. I don't know that I would have done well in lockup for the night. So I'm glad it didn't work out that way. And I'll cite my privilege again. We were three white guys. You know, if we had been a little bit more angry or if it had been a different situation, it might have ended differently. But the police that day certainly did not help to de-escalate the situation as it was. No.
Maybe they can hear us talking about them because we can hear some sirens going off in the background now.
Yeah, the sirens have finally come in. Yeah, that's the part. I live about 8 blocks from New York Presbyterian Hospital, so it was a treat during the first 6 months of COVID how the sirens came through the neighborhood.
Can imagine.
Sorry to make it dark.
So,
Even darker, the court system, and then the first 6 months of COVID.
I'll transition to something slightly more back to cricket. So you talked about a lot of things to do with getting involved and going up the pathway. So at one point, I can't imagine it would have been when you were being arrested, Brian, helping to organize and officiate, oversee a charity match. But at what point in your cricket journey as an umpire did it dawn on you, or did a light bulb or something click in your mind where you realized that you're actually good enough and respected enough that you're being recruited to get larger assignments, or when I say larger assignments outside of New York City, or better paying assignments where they would want you to fly in from out of state? And in conjunction with that, like part B of the question, at what point did you realize that you could genuinely attempt to make a professional career out of umpiring, in the sense that professional, you could earn a living and get paid enough to pay the bills through umpiring full time?
So I spent about 18 months in Pennsylvania in 2016, 17, because I lost my job. I told some of that story earlier. It's pretty much when I came back to New York from there. There wasn't much cricket where I was living in Pennsylvania. There was a bit of tape ball stuff. And then I would go to Philly as often as possible, do tour games for Columbia, try and umpire some games now and again when I could. But pretty much when I came back to New York in 2017, I had a full-time job. I was working for ostensibly a really cool company. I was working for the Anne Frank Center. So I was the national education assistant director. So I would travel all around the country and teach kids about the Holocaust, who most of whom had never really heard of it before. So I was doing really deep, kind of important historical work. And at the same time, I just was getting deeper and deeper into cricket. My boss, who was one of my really good friends at the time at the Anne Frank Center, said to me one time, she goes, "Listen, I've looked over at your desk a few times today, and all you've done is you've only had cricket pages up all day. Are you doing your work for this company?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing my work, but I'm also trying to do this work at the same time." I was trying to study. I was trying to figure out what I was doing that week. I was also on the board of Columbia at the time. So 2017 is when it started. And then over 2017, 2018, I really started to realize that I was getting good at what I was doing. I'd been gone from the New York scene for almost a whole season. And players told me they missed me. And league organizers said, "Damn, man, it was rough here last year without you here." And I said, "Okay, that means somebody is starting to respect me for what I do." And it's around that time that I yelled again loud enough to get in touch with the USA CUA and get invited to come out to their trainings through Nick Grant and Dewith Coleman, who are doing the trainings there, which is where I met Danny Caine. I met Danny Caine in early 2020. Around 2019, I'll go back. In the 2019 season, I did about 70 games of cricket in 2019. I played a little bit and I umpired as much as I could. I did a few weekday last man stands games, which I'm going to do again this year, which will be fun. And I just was like, I'm spending too much time doing this. So at the time I was working for the Anne Frank Center, I made about 40 grand a year. And I also worked on Thursdays and Friday nights at that same Aussie pub that we had been arrested from. I was the maitre d' on Thursday and Friday nights at that restaurant and pub. And then on the weekend, I would umpire cricket games. And that was the only way to survive, to live my life in New York City. I got a partner around the same time, Mel, who is an incredible human being, who I live with now, who we sort of fell into each other and fell into a life that we really liked. And the decision came up at some point. Do you want to be a full-time teacher still? Is that what you're going after? Do you want to be a full-time museum professional? Or do you want cricket to take up all of your time? Because right now, cricket is taking up too much of your time, on top of having a full-time job and a second job in order to pay for my life here in Manhattan. And so at that moment, I made the choice. I said, you know what? I'm going to try and do something else. I'm going to try and work part-time again. And I'm going to see if I can do a part-time job at the same time as I'm doing cricket. I can do a bit more in the winter time to try and make up for it. And that was great. And I made that decision sort of late into 2019. And I started going to these higher level trainings in early 2020. And then the whole world changed. on March 13th of 2020, I had started a brand new job at a school downtown a week earlier. And by Friday of my second week, we were sent home, initially for a week, and then it was 2 weeks. And then by the time I got paid basically to work at home at that school and run their online, basically I ran online after school programs, which was extra enrichment, storytelling, poetry, art, stuff like that in the after school space. And then when the new school year started, there was no money for me. I had no job. I was unemployed. I had spent the entire first 6 months, 8 months of the pandemic doing nothing but watching as much cricket as I could. I watched historical cricket matches. I read through Tom Smith a couple of times. I watched myself on video as often as I could umpiring to see how much I could get better. And then when the season came back in late 2020 and then in 2021, I decided this is what I'm doing. I'm going to work part-time. I'm going to do this as often as I can, and I'm going to try and make good money out of this. I have never expected to be a rich person. Even when I was working 40 hours a week at a job in Manhattan, I was only getting paid $40,000 a year, which is, a lower class income in this city. People in other parts of the country may, balk at that, but $40,000 in this city is feck all. So I can make $40,000 a year with a combination of temp work and umpiring cricket, because I can make $500 on a weekend all summer. And then with the additional LMS jobs, PSAL in the early part of the season, I'm making the same amount, nearly the same amount of money that I was making working full time doing umpiring every week. The problem is that that's inconsistent. Problem is that April showers exist. And in the last week, I've lost $750 in the last 2 weeks. That's my rent. I pay $1,200 a month in rent. $750 is the bulk of my rent for this month. So I am going to work some second shifts at the church that I work at. I'm a very unreligious person, like aggressively unreligious. I have debated priests live on stage at events. So working at a church, scrubbing toilets of the rich Brooklyn kids who go to the preschool of the church I work at, is in service of this thing that I'm trying to do, which is to be cricket umpire. I can see it happening. I've heard your reporting about how much these players are getting paid. And if we could, some of the players, not all of them, in minor league cricket, the lowest paid players only get paid as much as the umpires do for a game. But the lowest paid players get as much as the umpires do for a game. And everybody else goes up from that. And there's no scaling up from that. And we keep getting told there's no money to scale up from that. We had games canceled in Houston. I flew to Houston on my own dime to umpire 8 games, 10 games of cricket. We got a whole day washed out. I lost 2 games. I paid my own way to get there, even though I was in Texas, sitting there. Couldn't work for my temp agency while I'm sitting in Texas, and only get paid for the 8 games that I did rather than the 10. So these are the things that are really frustrating about cricket, more than just people showing up late. And to me, I've sort of, like we talked about earlier, now 4 hours later, I found myself in the same position right about this year where I was in my acting career in about 2011, 2012, where I was right on the cusp, where at some point somebody's going to offer me a lot of money to do the next step. But every time I get to the next step, the umpires there tell me how much they are disrespected and how little they get paid. So I have committed to this for now. And like I've talked about over the last 3.5 hours, I'm really intrigued and I really want to be a part of cricket for a long time. But I need to figure out a way to do that. There needs to be a youth program that'll pay me to come through and coach during the week, or in the winter time when people are doing indoor nets, maybe one of the nets places, like the players do. I'm soliciting for sponsorship. I've talked to all the equipment dealers. I've talked to all the shops around New York. I've talked to individual dealers and stuff about getting paid some money to wear their undershirts, or to have them buy my shoes for me, to have some in-kind donations to my in-kind sponsorship for what I'm doing. Between January 1st of this year and what is today, April the 18th, I've spent $1,200 on cricket equipment for umpiring, as well as travel to and fro games. And it's April. I haven't made that much yet. So I'm working at a loss at the moment. And so I'm looking for more ways to put myself out there, more ways to solicit for sponsorship, more ways to be able to work more fully in the game. And in conversation with people at the highest level of this game, they've told me that right now there isn't necessarily money or drive at the national governing body level to make that happen. So I'm wondering where else that might come from. They're talking about putting together panels of, junior and senior panels of, some of the best umpires in the country, but there's no discussion of whether or not there'll be stipends for those. And there's no guarantee, obviously, that I would get put on one of those panels. I think I know what I'm doing, but it's very possible that I'm not one of the top 15 guys in the country. I want to be. I think I've worked hard enough to be in consideration for something like that, but making this a full-time job, as you know, comes with a lots of back and forth negotiations with leagues, negotiations with my partner I have to be away for this long and I have to spend this much money on something. And so can you spot me rent for 2 months or sorry, not 2 months. She wouldn't do that, for 2 weeks. So I can wait for my check to come in from the PSAL, because I've done 10 games in a couple of weeks, but that check will come at the next pay cycle for the New York City public school system. So it is happening, and I am hopeful and I am ecstatic at how quickly cricket is developing. We, as an umpiring fraternity, need the national governing body as well as the leagues who are paying to make all of this stuff happen to invest in us umpires, because you might be able to bring Ken R. Lewis in for a weekend, but he's not going to respect the local umpire who you've thrown in to that game, who probably hasn't read the new set of playing conditions in a couple of years. And I find it fascinating that there is a group of us now who is traveling around the country, who is being called because we've made ourselves available. I scrub toilets at a church so that when Danny Kahn or Jermaine Lindo or when Vijaya Mallela call me and say, can you go to insert American city here in 6 days? My answer is yes. Let me talk to my partner. I have 3 rats at home, 3 pet rats. So I wave goodbye to my 3 little pet rats. But then I'm able to disappear 4 days later for a week because I've made myself available. But I probably won't get paid for that for 3 weeks. I probably won't see a paycheck for the next month. And I'll collect my money on the weekends and do what I can at home to keep on living in Manhattan. Because where the hell else am I going to live? I don't know. I don't own a car. I love it here. I moved here on purpose 12 years ago because this is the place I wanted to be. And people tell me, move to Texas, move to Houston, so you could do cricket every single day in Houston. Great. Don't know. I'm again aggressively unreligious person, so Texas is kind of hard in that way. And my partner doesn't conform to their gender, so I don't feel safe in Texas or in Georgia or in North Carolina. And those are the 3 places where cricket is sprouting up in the world. New York is losing its power, not those places. They're gaining in their cricketing power. And those are places I don't necessarily want to live full time. So there's a lot of decisions to be made day after day about how I'm living this life and the struggles it takes to do that. You're a guy, you've got a jar of change, right? You got a change jar? You got a big old jar of change?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. I turned mine in so that I could make sure I had enough money to pay for dinners out in Texas. That's where I'm at. So I love this game. I don't have health insurance, right? If I get smacked in the face because Ken R. Lewis hits a ball 100 miles an hour back at my head, I'm going to get charged $100,000 for a hospital. So these are the risks I'm taking because of this game, because it's incredible, because of some fascination or ADHD hyperfixation. I have gotten looped into this game and I love it. And I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep improving as much as I can. I'm just going to keep putting my face out there as much as I can. And it sucks when some of the older generation of umpiring uncles come to me and say, Brian, you can't just do this for the money. This isn't a job. I'm like, mate, you have no idea how much I have struggled for money, how much I have, how much like I said, I moved to Pennsylvania in 2017, or not 2017, sorry, 2015 with $200 in my pocket. I bought a bike for $100 because the guys at the bike shop felt bad for me. I turned in my old bike, which is a piece of crap. They let me buy a used one for $100 just so I could ride my bike 5 miles back and forth to the bar I was working at. So these are the places I've been, and cricket in a lot of ways has uplifted me out of that. I'm just sort of mentally, I'm waiting for it to do that financially. And I don't need to be rich. I don't need to be Owen Morgan rich or IPL rich. I just want to make enough money to live a lower middle class life in New York.
Today's episode of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast, presented by DreamCricket, is also sponsored by Musa Cricket Stadium, the first and original turf wicket facility in the state of Texas, and now one of the premier venues for the minor league cricket T20 franchise tournament. Located at 5515 McKeever Road in Pearland, 5 miles off the Bailey Road exit from State Route 288, and a half hour south of downtown Houston, Musa Cricket Stadium includes fully enclosed locker rooms and change rooms, plus shower facilities after a day's play, as well as outdoor nets for all your training needs. For more information, call 713-534-2195. That's Musa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas.
I got a couple questions about some of the financial aspects that you talked about and how umpires are treated in that regard. Mm-hmm. So a couple of just basic factual points I want to establish, building up to kind of the broader point. So how much would you estimate that you spend typically on expenses in a month or in a year towards transportation and other umpiring things that you talked about in terms of uniform, other equipment, anything that goes towards umpiring? So again, transportation, that could be subway fares if you've got a Metro card or you're paying per fare, or things like traveling out of state, plane tickets, and if it's Ubers, rental cars, any of that kind of stuff. How much would you estimate you spend on a monthly basis or a year that is expenses?
If I'm exclusively working in New York City, travel expenses are pretty minimal. I ride my bike to Randall's Island, and I did about 50 games there last year, so that was great. But yeah, getting on the subway, it's a $3 subway ride times 2 every day, times every single Saturday and Sunday for the whole summer. Anytime I go to New Jersey, though, that's a $30 back and forth New Jersey Transit train ride. And then obviously, anytime you go any further than that, you're going to pay in for planes and things like that. I'm yet to do one of the pop-up tournaments where any of your travel is paid for. Minor league cricket, luckily, has taken on travel cost for umpires. It's mostly gas, but I was able to work out with Josh at minor league cricket last year, their finance guy, that I don't have a car, so I'm not going to turn in gas receipts. I'm going to turn in train receipts. Is that okay? And he worked it out that was fine. So the only time I've ever been reimbursed for my travel is through minor league cricket, and that was the 9 games that I did in minor league cricket last year. So in a month, $100, maybe a little bit more. I don't have exact numbers for what I spent last year, but like I said, this year, I've already spent $1,200 this year in equipment and membership fees and travel. So I'll tell you what, the most expensive stuff that you get is not your membership fees, is not any of that kind of stuff. It's the stuff you have to purchase overseas. So nobody in America is making a bat gauge. This has to get shipped over to you. Nobody in America is making a ball gauge. So you have to order these online and pay a lot more money for them than you would if you were in your home country. Each one of our jerseys is good athletic material, somewhere between sort of 30 and 50 bucks for these shirts. Some tournaments will give them to you, some of them won't. I spent $160 on a hat and a box for that hat to go in, because as you move up the levels of umpiring, they expect that you have better pants, better shoes, better hats, better counters, better equipment sort of overall. And then you wait to get reimbursed for those. I've talked to umpires who do the US Open every year, who typically lose $500 a year when they go to the US Open, because the US Open doesn't pay for any hotels, any travel, any food, anything. Some of the other tournaments will. Houston, DC, Atlanta pay for a lot more than that. But yeah, it's a lot. it's a lot on my balance sheet.
I've had personal experiences where not to this extent something has happened, but there's a tournament in Florida. I won't say if it's the US Open. I won't say the name of this.
You don't have to say what it is.
But a tournament in Florida that I attended once several years ago, there was almost an umpiring mutiny because these umpires, not all of them, but some of them traveled from out of state to come umpire and officiate, and they were expecting a specific fee to umpire through each day. And one of the days got rained out. Was I think the first day of the tournament there was a significant number of matches that were rained out, and the tournament organizers stiffed them because the tournament organizer claimed, well, I'm paying you to umpire per match that happens. If the match doesn't happen, I'm not going to pay you. And it was, for what was ostensibly meant to be a large scale event, I thought it was penny pinching. And the umpires felt completely disrespected, but it was more the principle that they traveled, they've paid out of pocket, like you said, oftentimes at their own expense. Not everything is covered, especially when this event was happening. And they were counting, they had budgeted that the fees they expected to make per day would offset some of the travel expenses, and that didn't happen. And so they said, screw it, we're not going to come the next day. And so the next day of the tournament, they were short umpires because there was essentially a protest that the umpires said, screw you. And without telling, they just no-showed. They didn't tell in advance. They just no-showed on the day, genuine protest to say, you shortchanged us money we feel we were owed, rain or no rain. This is what we were told we were going to get. And there's that lack of respect at times that I've seen from umpires. I went through an experience in New Jersey where me and another umpire it was a private tournament. We were promised a certain fee, and it was supposed to be a per match fee. And there was, I forget if there was 2 matches on this day or 3 matches on a day. It was a 2020 tournament. But we were umpiring basically the whole day. We got there at like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., whatever, and stayed until 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, just standing in the sun the entire day. And at the end of the day, we were shortchanged. They gave us what we thought was the per match fee. The organizers stiffed us and said, no, that's your daily fee. And we said, no, that's not what we agreed to. Nah. And so then my umpiring partner no-showed the next day. So this was the first day Saturday. He no-showed Sunday. So I was stuck to umpire alone. What wound up happening was the teams agreed somebody from the team would supply themselves at square leg, but I would be the standing umpire for the entire match. And so I'm essentially doing double the work as the standing umpire throughout the entire duration of play. I'm umpiring alone. And on the Sunday, the organizer gave me the same fee. He didn't give me the fee that was essentially would have been equated to 2 umpires. I was doing double the work. He still gave me the same fee that he gave me the day before, which was still well under the agreed fee. It was supposed to be a per match fee instead of a per day fee. So I got into an argument with the organizer and said, this is garbage. This is a complete bait and switch. We agreed on a fee, and now you're giving me a runaround. And there's a reason why I umpired alone today is because you screwed over my partner, and I decided I'd give you the benefit of the doubt. I came back today and you're screwing me over again. And I just got a big sob story about how, well, we're paying you in cash and we don't have the money, but we'll get the money by next week for the tournament semifinals and the finals. And then I no-showed. I said, screw this. You guys can treat me this way. I didn't tell them. I just showed up, I no-showed for the semis. And then I got a call that morning. Where are you? The game's about to start. I said, well, you guys screwed me over. You treated me unprofessionally. So, garbage in, garbage out. So I've seen that happen in Florida. I've experienced it firsthand. The fact that umpires, it's affected you when you travel to events, you're paying out of pocket. And if a match gets rained out, oftentimes the organizers, they won't pay you for a match that gets rained out. They say, no, we'll only pay you for the match that happens. So we're not committing to paying you for budgeted expenses, whether the matches happen or not. And in your position, that can dramatically affect your income and your ability to continue with this. So from that standpoint, I'm just curious, when that does happen, how does that affect you on a very personal level? Just the fact that being able to pay the bills, what trickle down effect does that impact you? And does it affect in any way your decision-making processes in terms of committing to events, particularly the out-of-state events, which do require more expenses up front, where you run the risk that if some or many matches get rained out, you're going to come back making a loss? And was it actually even worthwhile?
I've yet to be really put in a tough position about that tournament in Florida that doesn't pay for anything. I was told kind of early last year that I wasn't on the list for that. I was told like a month out that I probably wasn't on the list for that. I said, okay, thanks, because I've heard enough stories from my colleagues that that is kind of a hard one to do, that people come back making a loss every time. It's a weird spot. And this is why I relate it to the acting quite a bit, because there are a lot of umpires out there. And this is, again, where my privilege and I guess sort of my position as a citizen of this country who's not here on a visa, that I sort of have the freedom to work when I want. And I really can, my temp agency is pretty nice. I really can call them and make up with them and sort of make up hours with them. This week, there's no PSAL, so I'm working a lot this week, at my temp job. But I know umpires. I was talking to a colleague of mine just the other day. I won't say who or where they're from, but they tell me that in their region, they umpire for free 25 to 30 games a year. And every single time that they do that, it adds to the culture of, well, these guys don't need to get paid, right? And so I think that culture permeates cricket, because the umpires are, even though it's written right in the laws there to respect the umpire, respect the umpire's decision, shake hands afterward, it's written right in the spirit of cricket that that's part of what you're supposed to do. And people in cricket will talk about sort of in this lofty way, oh, you got to respect the umpire's decision. It's never been that way on the field. It's as bad as any soccer game or any lacrosse game or any Aussie rules football game that I've ever refereed. This, as far as some of the talk back that you get, some of the stuff that you get from players, not even from players. It often is coming from team owners or from people involved in like the management group of teams who think they have some power in that team, who are wearing a jersey on the side of the field and they've paid the money to be there. And they're the ones who show the most sort of open disrespect to you. But the money to me is worth it when it comes, because I was sort of making most of my money off of New York games, right? Making most of my money locally. I get paid $100 to do a 30 over game on Randall's Island that I ride my bike to. I get paid $100 to do a minor league game that I have to ship myself to. I get paid $80 to do a T20 in Houston or in Atlanta during those franchise pop-up tournaments. So even less than the going rate of the minor league, which is, ostensibly on the same or even lower level than some of, all the overseas players they would have bring to these franchise tournaments. So the decision to go on these tours is necessary in order to meet people like Rushaine Simmons from Jamaica, who was in Texas, or he's from Atlanta, but he was in Texas recently, to be able to be on field. So in Houston, let's say, where I just went, we had an entire day rained off. We lost a game's worth of pay for that. We had 2 games rained off on the one day, but then we played 3 the next day to make up for it. But yeah, I was expecting to come home with some amount of money, with a fixed fee for what I was getting. And then we ended up, it was a per game fee. And that knocks my take home back. It's not worth it, but it's worth it for the experience. I hate that. I feckin' hate that. It's the same thing they said in acting. You got to do it for the experience. But guess what? I did 2 games in a row. I did a quarterfinal and a final on field with Jermaine Lindo, right? One of the top 3 umpires in the country. And he's also an assessor, right? In those games, he is watching my performance. He is taking notes, and then he's going to write a big full report about those 2 games that we did together and send those off to Cricket West Indies. And Cricket West Indies will read those and say, okay, he's done 1. That counts as 1 assessment, those 2 T20 games. I need to do 4. And after I've done 4 of those, then I can take my oral exam, and then I can become fully certified through the West Indies, which will open me up to doing club games in the West Indies, CPL, that next level of stuff. I'm going to get a full certification from a full member nation. That's good for me. I can't eat from that. So it's hard because I want to do both, right? I want to be able just to go for the experience. And my colleague who I was talking about said, oh, I don't mind paying my own expenses or not even getting paid for the guy. I just want to move up the ladder. I cannot move up the ladder unless I'm getting paid and getting paid fully to do that. And that's what's really frustrating, because I think I'm possibly the only person doing this, trying to be a full-time umpire. Those other guys that I mentioned, even the guys like Vijay Mallela and Samir Bandekar, they are only in this country because they have full-time jobs that give them visas to stay in this country. If they lose those jobs, if they spend too many weeks away at cricket tournaments, they're going to lose their visas, right? So they have to make a lot more decisions about which tournaments they're going to go to and which tournaments they're not going to go to. They don't need to make decisions about how they're going to pay their rent because they're getting paid full time to work for big corporations who are paying them real salaries. I don't have that. This is how I make my money. And so it's been challenging because I will accept everything. I will accept an LMS game on a Wednesday afternoon at Van Cortlandt Park. I will do 4 PSAL games that week, even if it means I don't make dinner for my partner every night, which is what I usually do here in my home. I will not be here on Saturday and Sundays because I have to work for 12 hours in the day to make sure that I get paid for that. It then sucks when you get paid less when you're being called on the phone and said, we need you here. You're one of the best. You have to come to pick an American city where there's cricket. You have to come to this. It'll be a great experience for you. There's going to be international coaches there. You'll get an assessment done. The players will learn who you are a lot more. Great. Can I do that without turning in my change jar to make sure that I make it home from Texas? So I make a lot of decisions. My decision on what tournaments I go to is pretty much always yes. As long as a hotel and like breakfast and lunch are paid for, it's pretty much always yes that I'm going to go at this point. But how long can I sustain that? I don't know. We'll see. At some point, I may have to quit, not out of my own desire because my hyperfixation has run out, but because my landlord is going to knock down my door. So yeah, sorry if I'm being over dramatic too, but
no, we're all about the drama on the Stars and Stripes.
This is where I'm at. Yeah.
The more the
this
merrier.
Is my life.
This is a good segue to, I guess, my final question. Cool. On the big picture. Taking all those things into consideration, what you've just discussed and how challenging it is to try and make this a full-time career just because of all the various issues in U.S. cricket and that kind of pathway that might not necessarily exist in terms of there being not necessarily a first-class structure, but the T20 pop-up events and minor league and limited other things like that are really pathway, if you want to call it that, to try and make a name for yourself. Do you honestly see a pathway towards rising to the point where you would be able to stand in an ICC level match, whether that's ICC Americas at a T20 qualifier or an ICC World Cup in 2024 that the USA is co-hosting? And if you do see that pathway existing for yourself or for anybody who comes after you, like you said, you hope to inspire kids to see umpiring as a profession and be a trailblazer in that way, what do you think it would take for you to progress along that pathway, whether that's just more match experience or a certain level of certification that you need to keep achieving and progressing? You need to talk level 1, if there's level 2, level 3, all these kinds of things. What do you think it would take to allow you to progress to that point to be able to stand in an ICC level match? And do you see that as a possibility for yourself?
That's the goal. I mean, you talk about wanting to inspire kids to see umpiring as a profession. I'm the first one doing it this way, I think. I mean, I'm not trying to big myself up about that, but, I've met 100 umpires in New York, and then we do sort of 30, 40 person calls, group calls when we're prepping for minor league and stuff like that. And the pathway is not exactly clear because of sort of USA Cricket's status as an associate, not a full member. But there are people leading the way in front of me. The 3 men I've already mentioned, Jermaine and Vijaya and Samir, they are the current crop of ICC qualified USA umpires. And we see the kind of success that they've had getting invited to ICC events. All 3 of them were invited to the Under-19 World Cup. Only 2 of them were able to go. And the stories that have come out of the Under-19 World Cup is that the umpires from Ireland and the umpires from Afghanistan and the umpires from other even full member countries are asking Vijay and Sammy where they got their equipment and how did they prepare for this. And, oh, I didn't know you needed to dress that way to do your pitch inspections. So there are people who are paving a path in front of me in very much the part-time way as to what an American umpire is capable of. VJ has done the vast majority of his training in the USA through the West Indies Cricket Association. Jermaine has done all of his umpire training. He was not an umpire ever when he lived in Jamaica. He has done all of his umpire training in America, and he has come through. And he's my assessor. He's the next guy. He's the next, that's the next rung for me, is getting where they are, is standing in a major league cricket match when that comes about next year. And then, probably not for 2024. I will serve my time as long as I need to, but that is the next step, is sort of where VJ and Jermaine and Samir, and then also guys like Rushain, who have come from the West Indies and who have already done CPL matches, who have already done high-level club cricket in the Caribbean. That is the next step that I'm reaching for. I'm under the impression that I'll be able to get my next certification and pass my oral exam this year, which will qualify me to do matches in the West Indies, which that's then a whole tour on itself to go and do some matches down there and maybe do an exchange. That's where I see the sort of technical side of it. And with major ICC events coming to the US, I'm sure they're going to want a small coterie of US umpires to be there. And if I can be in the top 10, top 15, and be in the selection conversation for those junior and senior panels that are coming up, and then also standing in Major League and standing in any of these other, maybe international tournaments that are coming through, as well as sort of regional under 19 and adult stuff here. Those are my next steps. That's the technical next step that I'm pretty confident I will be able to get to in the next year and a half. I'm sort of reaching toward, not ICC level, but reaching toward fully certified West Indian in the next year. Making it a profession, fully paying for my life, getting a bit of money involved. I have always been prepared for that, to need something extra. So that will be some combination of sponsorship. But sponsorship is hard because any company that sponsors a player is going to have an inherent sort of, what word am I looking for here, sort of conflict of interest about also then supporting an umpire, because there's really inherent anti-corruption issues there. So as far as sponsorships going, I'm looking for a company that's really interested in cricket but hasn't yet decided to jump into the sponsorship game. And you know what? I will answer phones at your law firm if you pay for my shoes for the year. If you pay me $15-20 an hour to come work at your law firm here, I'll answer phones all day. I'm an education professional. I'll come tutor your kids. I'll come babysit, like you've done, and all these things. But so what I think it's going to take sponsorship wise is if there's a company who's willing to put themselves out there for me and say, come work for us, come work in our equipment shop, come work at our school, come work at our lawyer's office and answer phones. And then with the understanding that every time you get a call to go to one of these tournaments, you get the days off, and you go to those things. And American businesses don't work that way. So that's a little bit difficult. Beyond that, I also am doing all my part-time jobs, keeping things up in the background. So I don't need to make much to do this. I'd hope that as I sort of go up the ranks and the players around me get more famous and get paid a lot more, that my salaries will go up. Technically, I'm pretty confident that I'll keep getting better. And that if this is the kind of level that I land at, where I'm at now, then I'll come up with a different plan. But if I can keep advancing up through the ranks and I can see that there will be some money in there somewhere, then I'm going to stick to it. I've heard from Buckner, I've heard from these guys who have done CPL and who have worked on international panels and stuff like that before. We talk about how much we get paid, for those sorts of things. And if I were to do a few weeks in the CPL, I'd be set for a couple months back home, So part of the plan here, even with my partner involved, is that we might try to go to a full member country for a year, try and make some connections in Australia, make some connections in England, and then see if I can disappear and do club level cricket in England for an entire summer and see what kind of money and experience that gains me internationally. that I could, maybe keep doing this and then eventually go up and do World Cups and ICC events and those things. Then I'll be set. They get paid a lot, right?
I'll tell you, Brian. One of the things that shocks me about UK club cricket culture, yeah, in general, in American, by comparison, you wouldn't believe how much better it is in America. League umpires in the UK, generally speaking, a Premier League level umpire might only get £20 or £30 a match, plus maybe gas expenses, but the league will only pay 10-mile maximum radius for you to travel. They don't want you traveling far, because the supply and demand, just basic supply and demand. They've got more people to do it. Whereas
I'm gonna have to get good enough to do like county second 11s or something. Then.
But like, yeah,
for so more dollars.
It's shocking. Like in New York, New Jersey, yeah, you can get 100, 120 bucks a game. Versus in England, yeah, at best you're looking at maybe £30 a game.
I'm going to Afghanistan. They gotta pay well.
There you go. You go to Kabul.
I'll be the one American who's coming in. Like, hey, I'm good. Like, I'm good.
But similarly, players I've spoken to who have gauged their interest, do you want to come to Manchester to be a part of a club for a season? And it's just basic dollars and cents. Some of the guys who are on the fringes of the U.S. national team, you tell them the offer is, if they want to play as a club pro in England, first off, they have to be a certified coach. They're not even going to start the conversation at a club in England if you're not coach, because they expect you to be able to coach the juniors and do some other coaching during the week to help make yourself valuable to the club. But you might get £100 a week. Whereas, full well, some of these guys who play, they essentially barnstorm up and down the coast in New York, New Jersey, DC, whatever. Some of these owners in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, DC, they'll throw guys who are at the U.S. fringe. They don't even have to be regulars in the U.S. national team. They can be fringe U.S. national team players. They might get $300, $400 a game on a weekend. And you tell these guys, well, don't you want to come to England and get the experience, play on turf wickets? You're not playing on turf wickets in DC and New York and New Jersey. It's all artificial. Your game is kind of deteriorating. Yeah, you're making money, but your game is deteriorating. They say, hey, I got to pay the bills. If I'm getting paid $400 to play in New Jersey, New York, it can be the crappiest wicket ever. I'll take the money and worry about the consequences later, but I can't afford to develop my game in England on turf wickets if they're only going to pay me £100 a week or, weekend, whatever. So and umpiring is the same. I was shocked. I couldn't believe how much more money I could make in New Jersey and New York umpiring games than I could get in England. It's stunning.
Wild. Talk to my friends in Australia next then, see what happens there.
I'm not sure what the going rate is on Australia, but in UK, yeah, I don't know if England is the best option for you. Of all the things you talked about, the experiences you've gotten to expose yourself alongside Steve Buckner and Samir Bandikar and Vijay Malella and Jermaine Lindo and some of the other guys, Shane you mentioned, who, like as you said, was in Texas. Mateen Namdar was also one of the umpires down there in Texas. All these guys are on the circuit. Danny Kahn, who's been around a long time. They've been doing this 10, 15, 20 years or more. And they grew up in a heavily dominant cricket culture. And it was always around them. So even when they weren't umpiring, it was always around them growing up. It was ingrained. You've got the double whammy of you don't have the experience and you didn't grow up with the game. So you're playing a rapid game of catch up. I mean, the amount of games that you're discussing, 70 plus games a year, the volume that you're getting, you're playing a very fast game of catch up to close that gap. But what else do you feel currently in terms of what you think you need to do to close that gap to improve your chances in terms of something that you feel you might be deficient in or is just missing from your umpiring resume that you feel will help close that gap in order to speed up the progression and get you further or faster along that ladder, climbing the ladder to try and get to the things we talked about in terms of, whether it's ICC or Major League Cricket assignments or anything else that would be considered elite standard cricket, whether it's in USA, Caribbean, CPL, or at international level with the ICC.
What's been great about being on that circuit with some of the guys you talked about is that they are very willing and very open, and it's part of the system at that level to give feedback constantly and without deep criticism and without sort of taking it personally. Like this, you just learn some stuff on the field that no one has ever told you before. Or a very small thing, every umpire puts their arm out like this, right, to stop the bowler from coming in, right? Stop that. Talk to Peter Nero, the head trainer in the West Indies. He'll tell you, put your arm down. Nobody does that anymore. Don't put your arm out. Just take a step to the side. Technical stuff, little stuff. Nobody told me that until Peter watched a minor league game and then sent me a list of stuff that I could do better. So I'm getting feedback at this point pretty constantly, at least when I'm doing these franchise barnstorming leagues and stuff like that. When I'm doing minor league cricket, I'm getting assessed. I'm getting feedback on what I can do. There's some technical stuff that I need to improve as far as that goes. I'm communicating with my fellow umpire because most of the work that I do in New York, like you did in New Jersey, is by myself. I do both ends. I try and get double paid for the day. That is a ton of experience for me at the bowler's end. But it means that at the striker's end, I have some stuff that I still need to work on, confirming signals, stuff like that I've been assessed for and that are things I need to improve.
This and then the
yes,
that.
You do halfway. It's all you do 2 up, you do 1 down.
One,
yeah.
2 up. Yeah, one is over here, and then halfway you gotta go like this halfway through the over.
Every time there's a wide or a wicket or a dead ball or any kind of interruption, you got to look over and confirm. So you can also confirm 5 and 4 if there's been a no ball or something. And that's stuff you didn't learn until getting up to these next levels. I was talking to some of the umpires in Texas and they said, oh, you're looking really good. Your outfit looks really good. But at the ICC level, they might want you to have different pants. Different pants? My pants, they're fine. They're black. They fit me. They're fine. So there's some.
They say different bit. Is this like they want you to like? I'm thinking like, geez, yeah, gosh. I used to show up umpiring games in like Dockers. Mm-hmm. Do they want you buying like Armani? Like you got to go to Macy's and get custom fitted, tailored. What do they want?
I found a very good pair of pants actually that are mostly on overstock from American Eagles. They don't make them anymore, but I'm a 32 waist, 34 leg. So finding like athletic material pants that are also professional looking, fancy enough looking for umpire work, because they're not just track pants, they're business pants, but they're made of athletic material. So they're very specific things I've spent a bunch of money on, but it's little stuff like that, technical stuff. But I think the biggest thing sort of in my way to getting to any of those things is just how quickly American cricket itself can advance. You talk about my sort of lack of experience. I'm basically riding the wave of my lack of experience, because every time I tell a player my story, they're like, damn, that's interesting, right? And every time I talk to a new umpire from somewhere, I talk from somebody like, oh yeah, you're that guy. You're the tall white guy from New York. Hey, good to see you again. And I think that the people who are doing cricket at the highest level in this country are prepared to make it their full-time gig. And I think if we can all sort of unify, terrible Joe Bidenism, but if we can all unify through cricket and sort of bring ourselves together all at the same time, which it seems like we're almost on the cusp of doing now, that we'll all go there together, that we can sort of rising tides lifting all boats. But I think that will require a lot of people giving up power that they perceive they still have, despite the fact that they're losing it quickly. So I think that we're in a real transition phase here from what was old American cricket to new American cricket. And if our national governing body cannot get suspended by the ICC for 10 years or something, right? Like if we can get through this World Cup and then into what is hopefully an Olympic year in 2030, I think that the launch pad that then happens is going to be incredible. And I think there's a lot of us that are going to slog through the next 7-8 years to get there. And I'm prepared for that. I'm just hoping I can pick up those coaching gigs on the side too.
Let me ask you this. The ICC treatment of umpires in terms of the marquee matches where you can be assigned to officiate, a large extent of that has nothing to do with actual umpiring competency. And the most important factor is just citizenship or where you're born, compared to FIFA, where, so what I mean by that is test nations, in order to umpire in a test match or in a test nation, you have to be essentially born or from a citizen of a test nation. So only Australian umpires could potentially umpire a game between Pakistan and England. Whereas if you're a USA umpire, you might only be able to umpire matches with other associates at senior level, with the potential of exception, maybe, an under-19 World Cup. You mentioned the guys who went to the West Indies from the USA in that event, compared to, say, FIFA, where you could have a USA referee refereeing a match in the World Cup between England and Argentina. There's no different class status differentiations. What is your overall feeling of the simple classification to do with nationality, where an American umpire could be just as competent, if not more competent, than an umpire from Australia or the West Indies or Sri Lanka, but just by virtue of the fact that they're American, they would never ever get a chance to officiate in a test match?
I would love to do a test match. That would be absolutely incredible. It would be literal dreams come true since I discovered what cricket was. I love test match cricket. I love first class cricket, but I understand that my path to getting there is very rocky, and I'm going to have to do a ton of T20 games at the highest professional level before we get there. Where I think myself and people like Jermaine and these guys who have trained themselves basically over the last 6 or 7 to 10 years, who are now at the highest level, we have a partnership with the West Indies Cricket Umpires Association. The shirt that I wear, that one, has a USA logo on it and a West Indies logo on it. And when I'm fully certified to work through the West Indies Cricket Umpires Association, I'll go spend my winters there and work first class games if I'm selected to do so. I think that there are strange paths to doing that, but I think it's possible. And I think that even beyond test matches or first class matches, I think that 50 over cricket will continue to grow. I don't think we're going to kill the 50 over game quite yet. There's at least 3 or 4 cycles of those World Cups coming through. And I think with the under 19 World Cup is such a good example of the one we just had, where you've got teams like Afghanistan coming through regionally. You've got teams like Japan and Oman and the UAE, even places like the Ugandan under 19 team is quite good. Those guys are great on Twitter, by the way, the Uganda group. But like I think associate cricket will grow. I think that the pressures coming from the international group of associate crickets, even though they don't have sort of technical power within the ICC at the moment, I think the sport is shooting itself in the foot, and there needs to be a bit of a generational change to make sure that the game grows around the world. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that there are different statuses of different countries, that if you play, the USA should be able to play against Argentina in a test match if they want to. Who cares? Put them in Van Cortlandt Park and play for 5 days and call it why can't you? I know that there's lots of things, but yeah.
Everybody knows the challenges that are posed to the players. I don't think a lot of people necessarily give an awful lot of thought to the challenges and the obstacles that it presents the officials in this situation.
Yeah.
And you go back to your previous answer, you're talking about you feel like the speed of your progression or your ability to progress is dependent upon USA's overall administrative progression, their advancement in world cricket, and the success of the men's national team or the women's national team on the field of play. And if they succeed on the field of play and rise, essentially at the moment, it could theoretically be up to the men's team and whether or not they advance to ODI status or full member status to determine whether or not you would ever get to officiate.
Of course.
Do you feel that those two things should be decoupled or are still in together? Or as you alluded to, do you think there's still a pathway for you independent of USA where you could go to the West Indies and progress through a umpiring pathway through that route a bit easier?
Yeah, I mean, I've basically tried to look at how I'm going to go about this career as if I'm a player, soliciting for sponsorship, trying to figure out where else I can use my skills. Can I go barnstorm an LMS tournament for a week and go make a bunch of money, or like a little bit of money there and at least get my face out there a bit more? I think that if USA is going to, there's a lot going on with USA getting full member status and whether or not that will include test matches. And I know they put out the whole plan about becoming a full member in 10 years, but where are we going to play first class cricket, and how many first class competitions how many first class teams are we going to be able to have? There's a plan. I've mentioned my partner a few times. They come from a very small town in the middle of nowhere and moved to New York basically after escaping the terrible situation that they were in. And the idea of moving to an Australia or an England or somewhere in the Caribbean to make a bit of a career move for them is also very open. They have partners that they work with in Nottingham, in the UK. And so we're sort of made a few connections there, sort of very just like floating the idea out there. Hey, my partner Brian, he's a cricket umpire. He's in the US. We're thinking maybe we'll come over for a year. She could get a job and work over there. And, you know, I could go over there with her and sort of try and make a life out of that and see if I can get myself. I maintain an ECB membership. I pay every year £15 for an ECB membership. I go to all their AGMs online and stuff like that to have my face out there to say, hey, if I show up one day, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. I have a history with Australian football, so I have connections to Sydney and Melbourne, and I have some journalist friends who I've met through random connections and a great day out at Lord's that have, you know, said, oh yeah, we'll talk to some people. We'll do this. Well, you know, we'll see if we can get you over here. It would be great if you lived in London for a stay. That would be awesome. How can we do that? I don't know. I'm gonna have to find a way to pay for it. I'm gonna have to make enough money here in American cricket to be able to do that. And if cricket goes the way a lot of things go, you know, in America, then our top paid players, you should be making a bunch of money pretty soon, and they're going to demand a higher level of professionalism. And I think that if we can get some good management in the development side of things, whoever it is that's going to be running the umpires at USA Cricket, we need somebody to fight on our side. We need somebody to, there's a lot of talk about unionizing right now. I'm not talking about starting an umpires union or anything that's official, although in 10 years, I feel like that could really be a thing. I know the MLB umpires have a union, and some of the other high-level officials have unions. So I think that if we could get to a point where we're working in national and regional sort of like a database out there of all of us standard fees, so that you know when you're going into a kids game at this level, it's this much. When you're going into an adult men's game at this level, it doesn't matter what league is, they have to pay you this much. If you're going to get called to go to somewhere, they have to pay for your flights, and they have to pay for these sorts of things to make it accessible and to make sure that that level of professionalism keeps rising. So all of these are dependent a little bit on the success of cricket as a whole. Moving to a full member country has always been sort of in the back of my head as a plan. I've emailed Claire Polisak. I reached out to her. I reached out to Cricket New South Wales and said, hi, I'm Brian. This is what I'm doing. Are there opportunities? No, there aren't many opportunities right now for somebody like you, but hell of a job you're doing. You know, I spoke to the director of the ECB ACO at their AGM. He was like, oh, we have one American here. Hello, Brian. How are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know who any of you are. But if I show up in your country at some point, will you pay me to do cricket? So yeah, there are plans. Whether or not any of those happen, or whether or not I'll be an aide in a school again in 2 years and, you know, have a completely different life, is, yeah, kind of up to the success of cricket as a whole.
Overall, all the things we talked about, what do you enjoy most about umpiring? Why do you do it in the grand scheme of things? And why would you recommend umpiring to somebody else if they asked you why they should get involved through all the experiences that you've discussed?
This is a game that, especially in the modern times, is ostensibly for elite athletes, but it comes from a tradition of being for nerds. And I think that there is a place in cricket for both the elite athlete and the nerd, whether that's somebody who is in a booth doing statistics all day and, you know, running complex data models on stats to try and figure out the best way to do something. Incredible. Go do that. Nerds love it. I'm a history nerd. So what I've done is I've watched a bunch of old cricket to try and figure out where new cricket comes from. And I read big, thick books in order to educate myself about the game. I read parts of this book. It was hard to get through, though. This Inside the Selection Room. There's so much going on, you know, that I'm messing with you now. But yeah, this is a sport for both the elite athlete and the nerd. And I think that if you fall somewhere along that continuum, you can be in cricket and you can find a piece of cricket that really means something to you. And it means something to me to be out there and to do this game joyfully. It brings me joy every time I signal a wide, every time I give somebody out LBW, every time a captain comes up to me at the end of the game and says, that game went really well, thank you. That's the most positive part for me, is meeting people from across cultures and across the world who are brought together by this stupid stick and ball game with these little sticks at the back. You hit those, they're different. I don't know. But like everything about this game just to me screams history nerd. And if I'm able to exercise some of my skills as a teacher and as a coach, while I also get to interact with some of the best athletes in the world, I'm in. What is there not to love? People ask me how I got into cricket. And I said, have you seen cricket? This game is joyful. And when it's played joyfully, it is an incredible experience for everybody involved.
Sage words from Brian Caine. Time for favorite 11 after 4+ hours of.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, let's do it.
Now, I try to tailor some of these questions to the guests specifically from episode to episode. You said you technically consider yourself part of Philadelphia, grew up in Philadelphia, Northeast Philly. Very important cheesesteak question. Are you a Pat's or a Geno's cheesesteak man?
I have 2 fingers for Pat's and Geno's, 1 on each hand. The best place to go if you're going to be in the city is Jim's on South Street.
Jim's on South Street. That's Brian Caine's favorite cheesesteak. Pat's and Geno's. Get the double middle finger. Your favorite Philadelphia sports moment in your lifetime?
When Ron Hextall, the goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers, left his crease and met, what's his name? Patrick Waugh, R-O-Y, Waugh, at mid-ice for the best goalie fights in hockey history. Ron Hextall went, however long it is from his crease to center ice, he did that faster than any goalie has ever moved in history. And he clotheslined Patrick Waugh and took him out. And as a young, aggressive man in Philadelphia who loved a bit of hockey, who was also a soccer goalkeeper who loved to take out people's legs, Ron Hextall and Patrick Waugh fighting at center ice in a hockey game. Fighting in hockey is nonsense and it should not be allowed to happen, but that is a formative, it's a thing that sat in my brain and said, I'm from Philadelphia, I am aggressive, sports are mean, this is what I have to do.
Now help me out. I'm sure if I go on YouTube, I'll find Ron Hextall fights Patrick Waugh. But was this Montreal Canadiens Patrick Waugh or Colorado Avalanche Patrick Waugh?
Avalanche Patrick Waugh.
So it's a bit later. Avalanche. I thought you were going to go with Ron Hextall that becomes the first goalie to score a goal, and then you veered off into a very different direction. Wasn't expecting that one, Brian. Okay,
it's the Philadelphia aggression. It comes through sometimes.
That is a treat. Now, what honest Philadelphian would have said Ron Hextall scores a goal as a favorite? No, Ron Hextall starts a fight with
Patrick Waugh. Probably the best goalie in the league at the time, Patrick Waugh. But Hextall was just going to take him out.
All right, as somebody who spent some time in the acting world in New York, what is your favorite Broadway stage production? Musical or play, or off Broadway? What counts too? Anything in the vicinity of New York City stage production?
I am blanking on the name of it. It's an Edward Albee play where there are lizard people, and it is definitely my favorite non-musical that I've seen on a Broadway stage. I'm blanking on what it's called. I'll look it up. I'll find it later. But it's an Edward Albee play. He's the same author of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And this is very like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, except in the second act, there are literal people in literal lizard costumes. And it's incredible. And it's sort of it's very absurdist. It's very about the nature of life and what does it mean to be a couple and what does it mean to relax and be on vacation and then be interrupted by giant lizard people.
Seascape,
absolutely. You're a genius. Did you look that up or do you know that?
I have to give credit to Google on that one.
Oh, that's incredible.
I looked up Edward Albee lizard people and Seascape popped up on the first several.
The most popular Don Nigro play, who's one of my favorite playwrights as well, is called Seascape with Sharks and Dancer, and I sometimes get them mixed up. But Don doesn't produce plays for Broadway. He's much more sort of the rung below that. My favorite musical I've ever seen is probably The Book of Mormon, because again,
I have not seen that. So when it came out, my mom and my brothers have all seen it, but it was impossible to get a ticket. Couldn't get a ticket.
I went pretty recently, actually. There were pandemic tickets for a couple bucks. We wore a mask and sat as far away from other people as we could.
I'm looking at this seascape though. I've never heard of it before you mentioned it, but it says here it got the Pulitzer Prize in 1975, and it had in its original cast Frank Langella and Deborah Kerr, who I recognize. There's some other actors there. So it was.
I think I saw Tyne Daly and Brian Dennehy, and it was who I saw. Brian Dennehy was very good.
Your favorite cricket ground experience that you've had as an umpire?
As an umpire, it's definitely some of the finals we've done at Baisley Pond Park in New York City. When you do the big finals and semifinals there, you get big crowds that come out. The entire Guyanese community of that area comes out to watch. There's cooking all day. There's music all day. The guys will park their van a few feet off of the field and just play the music out of that the whole day. Big presentations. It's very communal. It's very friendly. I like those quite a lot. In a non-umpiring sense, I'll give you the very standard answer of I've been to 2 test matches, but the first one I went to, I was at Edgbaston in the Hollies stand when James Anderson bowled out India on day 4 in 2018. And we spent the rest of the day playing gully cricket in the concourse of Edgbaston. And at some point, a young man took off his prosthetic leg, and that's what we batted with. That is the best cricket ground experience I've ever had. I wasn't an umpire, just a spectator, but that was the best cricket ground experience I've ever had.
Umpire experience was Baisley Pond.
Guyanese, big party, Baisley Pond.
Got to be specific. Baisley Pond, not Baisley Cage. Baisley
not the
Pond.
cage. No, the pond. The one in the middle.
Baisley Pond. Okay, and then not as an umpire, being able to use a prosthetic leg from some other spectator to bat with outside of Edgbaston.
It's a 10-year-old kid bowling, 10-year-old Indian kid bowling leg spin at me. I couldn't touch him. I could not touch him, even with the prosthetic leg.
Your favorite cricketer of all time?
My favorite cricketer of all time, and it's an obvious one. There's lots of old spinners and like weird old dudes in the game who I would love to say are my favorite cricketer of all time, but it's really Alyssa Healy. Just above and beyond. Alyssa Healy is one of the most powerful players playing in the game today. I came up through the game as a wicketkeeper, and she was the most inspiring. She's the most inspiring women's keeper that I've seen. I like Sarah Taylor a lot, but Alyssa Healy to me has that next level of aggression that the Aussies like to show that I appreciate. She's a massive opening batter. She's incredible, and I named one of my rats after her. One of my rats is called Midge, named after Alyssa Healy.
I'm gonna have to tag her into this when I could chop this up, and I think she will be.
I have a little Elise Perry bag, but yeah.
Wait, hold it up again.
They don't have an Alyssa Healy bag, but I found this little on Etsy. I found this little Elise Perry bag, and I keep all of my counters, my umpire counters, in here.
So we got the Elise Perry bag, but Midge, the pet rat,
is my favorite player,
named after Alyssa Healy. So I'm sure Alyssa Healy, that may be the most unique honor she's had in her career. Somebody naming a pet rat after her. Oh, can't wait to see her reaction for that one.
The 3 of them are called Midge. One of them is called Birdie after Dickie Bird, the umpire. And then the other one is Francis, which is a Fran Drescher reference, which is a Final Word podcast reference.
I thought it was going to be about the nanny.
It's about the nanny. Yeah, she's from Queens. I do games in the Flushing Sheffield Shield, the Mr. Sheffield Shield out in Flushing. So Mr. we have a good time.
Mr. Sheffield, yes.
That's an Adam Collins joke. I'll give it to him. But
now has Fran Drescher ever come out to any cricket matches at Corona Park?
She hasn't. We're working on it. We're going to make it happen.
There's still time.
There's still time. I did go to a synagogue once to give a presentation on the Holocaust in Brooklyn, where in the gents' toilets, they had a signed photo of Fran Drescher in, a state of like elegant undress, sort of, that's signed by her. And it's in the gents' toilets in the synagogue when I was doing a Holocaust education program. That was pretty shocking. I have pictures of it.
I'm not sure how to segue out of that. Let's go on to the next question.
Next one.
Your favorite non-cricket athlete of all time, Brian?
This is also going to be out of left field, but his name is Joe Caine. He's a hurling player from Portumna in Galway. He was an incredible prodigy. His whole family plays for Portumna. And he came up as like a 16, 17-year-old, and he was the biggest guy in the competition. And he can hit points over the bar from 70, 80, 90 yards away like it's nothing. He can cut the ball off the sideline over the bar like it's nothing. And yeah, I watched him play. I was in Dublin in 2009, ostensibly trying to write my college thesis. I didn't drink at the time, so I wasn't on spring break. I was trying to write my college thesis, and I got to see him play in a college match, and it was the level above that he was in about 2009 was incredible. Joe Caine, Portumna and Galway, hurling player.
You are the first and maybe the only guest I will ever have on the show who will name a hurling player as their favorite non-cricket athlete. We're making history here. Brian Caine, the trailblazer in many, many ways of this podcast. Your favorite place to eat out on tour away from home?
There is only one answer to this question, and it is Five Guys, obviously, because it's the only place to get the best burger and the best fries, no matter what town you're in. Forget about McDonald's and forget about Burger King, all this other fast food. If there's a Five Guys, we'll find ourselves there. I'm so sorry that I missed you in Texas, because we're going to have to do that at some point.
Yeah, me and Nate Hayes, we had just come from the Five Guys and we saw you in the hotel lobby. And now that we know, next time we're going to make it happen right now. A follow-up question to that, 7A. There's 223 different ways you can make a Five Guys burger, according to the sign when you go and order on the menu. What is your way? What do you put on your Five Guys burger?
Double American cheese, pickles, onions, lettuce, and barbecue sauce. That's my John.
You go for the little fries and just have them overflowing or
in the bag.
I've never ordered anything but a little. I don't even know what the other ones are called. Is it medium and a large? It can't be. What is it?
I don't think I've ever gotten that much fries. Tall. I think I just get the regular.
Is it like tall or something? I don't know. Little's enough. Your favorite beverage?
I'm a hot tea man, and I did a project one time on the Twinings company from England, and I did a bunch of research into them. So I really enjoy buying different flavors of Twinings and trying them out, but I'm trying to explore a lot more loose tea, of which I don't know the brand names. So I'm a big tea and sugar and milk fan. So I go with a Twinings Earl Grey. It's probably my everyday favorite staple tea in the morning. Your
favorite pizza topping?
I'm a big fan actually of a white pizza. I went through a phase in about, I don't know, middle school or something where I could not stand pizza sauce. Something about it just really bothered me for a couple of years. And so I think I got really into white pizza around that. And just the garlic of it and the big clumps of cheese on the top. I'm all day. I'm into it.
Your favorite movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time is The Quiet Man. That was directed by John Ford. It's from 1954, starring John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. It's about an American boxer who moves back to his hometown in Ireland to get away from his troubles back in Pittsburgh, Massachusetts, USA, where he grew up. It's a joke from the movie. My family has been watching this movie every single year around St. Paddy's Day for about 45 years at this point. My favorite scene from the movie is tattooed onto my body. And yeah, I have written college papers about it. So The Quiet Man. Maureen O'Hara, it's this beautiful movie. They basically brought 2 or 3 Hollywood people over and then just hired the town. This town, I've been to that town. By the way, I went to Ireland and I went to that town and I went to all the places and I touched all the stones and I ate dinner in all the places where they lived in the show. I wandered around the ruins of their fallen cottage in a town way out in the west coast of Galway. And yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful movie. Maureen O'Hara is absolutely stunning in it. It's the most acting John Wayne's ever done, except for the time he played Genghis Khan.
Your favorite show to binge watch when you've got time, Brian, because your days are quite jam-packed with a lot of things. But on the rare occasion, pandemic or no pandemic, when you do have some spare time, what's your go-to binge show?
I am a big fan of cartoons for big people. And for the last probably 5-6 years, it's been Bob's Burgers. I love the way that those people talk to each other and the way that they act as a family. I would have gotten up to hijinks like that those kids got up to. And I love that show. I love that show. It's about working class people who are sort of working hard to love each other the best they can. Makes you really happy.
Brian Caine, I think we set a new record.
How'd we do? Yeah.
You've broken the Nate Hayes record for the longest podcast guest session in the Stars and Stripes podcast history. Another trailblazing moment in the history of the show, Brian. You're creating history in so many ways with your work in American cricket on the umpiring scene and blazing a trail on this podcast too with some of the new historic feats you've achieved. So
see, now I should have told you at the beginning, and I tell most people this, like when I meet them or I'm in conversation with them at a bar, and I should have told you this at some point, which is basically shut me up when I talk too much, because it's a feature, not a bug.
The shoe's on the other foot, Brian.
Just out here swapping stories, man. I'm in.
So Brian Caine, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to give you the final word. Anything you feel people really need to know about you that we haven't discussed in the nearly 5 hours we've been chatting away?
I want to thank the people of cricket, basically, for accepting me, because it's hard to find acceptance in a lot of places. No matter where you've grown up, no matter what you're doing, it's hard to find acceptance. And being accepted into the cricket fraternity has been one of the greatest joys of my life. And the only thing that would make it more joyful is if we can exponentially continue to grow the number of women in the game. Thank you very much for having me on, Peter.
Thanks again to Bryan R. Caine for coming on the podcast to give a bit more insight about the world of the umpires and the match officials on the American cricket scene. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already done so, to please subscribe to Patreon. Everybody who is a patriot for the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast helps to keep the podcast running on an episode-by-episode basis, so I appreciate everybody who has contributed so far. And I also want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube if you watch the video version, or alternatively, if you like to listen to the podcast on one of the podcasting platforms, subscribe on Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and other podcasting platforms where you can get the latest edition of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast downloaded directly to your app. That's it for this episode. I'm Peter Dolphenna. God bless America, and God bless American cricket.